Hey guys, still there? In this deck review I'm looking at a USSR general deck. It was sent in by Chack321 some time ago. I only got around to it now. His deck goal is to build a general USSR deck that can do anything from destruction to conquest from 10 to 10 to 1v1. It would not work very well with low points, he wrote. Also, it's not meant to engage the enemy navy. He wants to know how he can improve this deck, and he said special mention goes out to the Mist artillery unit. It's my favorite. Okay, not really an easy mission profile to work with, since building a deck that can do everything is going to be an all-rounder. So it is going to be, as they say, master of none, because it's not specifically geared towards one specific purpose. Now that doesn't make it a bad deck, it just means that we're going to have to be very, very clever about what we can use and how we're going to use it. Because even on a mission profile like this, you can take some units that are going to perform well regardless. So you're going to have, say, some infantry to make sure that in a 10v10 you can cover the middle ground, and in a 1v1, like Wanzan Harbor for example, you can hold the harbor. You also want to have some tanks, although not that many, and he has 20, which seems fair. You want to have some recon of all types and varieties. He has a napalm tank in here, a BMPT and a Norov. The deck looks solid on first approach. He has 57 out of 60 activation points, and I'm guessing that with that, that's because he didn't use the DLC 3 beta, which I'm currently running. So I got 3 more points to spend somewhere. Now logistics looks solid. He has one UAZ 469U, just a standard command vehicle. A FOB, a Ural 4320, which carries 1100 units of supplies. You cannot go any bigger than this one in the USSR deck. And then he has the MI6 transport chopper. If you want to get something that's really huge, you can always go for the MI26. The MI26 carries 6,000 units of supplies versus only 3,700, although the word only should be used carefully here. I think that this is a good setup since it has to operate in a 1v1 to 10v10. Now in infantry he has Facturias, not the best ATGM infantry, but maybe that's with a reason. You can make the choice between Facturias, which are, I suppose you could say, by far the worst. They have 16 AP power, they got 45% accuracy and a range of 2450. Then you got the Concours, better range, same accuracy, a little higher AP power, or the Concours M, which have the same range, little higher accuracy again, and more AP power. I usually prefer the standard Concours, because that 20 AP power versus 16 AP power could be significant. It depends on what you're engaging. But this 4 points of extra armor penetration might just be worth it, and especially since it's only 5 points. I know you're going to lose some availability. You got 13 of these guys, and we're not going to get the same amount. He went with the BTR RD robot here, which also carries the Fagot anti-tank weapon. Nice to have this around to make sure that you can do a lot more anti-tank than just the infantry. So we're going to take the Concours at the robot. Since their base accuracy isn't stellar, only 45% and 40% for the robot, we're going to take these at 7. Then he has the Igla N, great anti-air unit. It has a great base accuracy of 55%, so you don't really need the upvet. And since it is a prototype unit, you can only have 1 card of these. So I'm going to stick to those at 7. Transport he's using is this Krajet, great anti-air unit. It's not the best, of course, but it's only 15 points, and you do get this pretty much for free. So we're going to stick to that unit. 18 Motostrelki 90. I think that with this he has a lot of the same type of infantry. I know the Motostrelki are, I suppose you could say, inferior to VDV 90s, but having 2 VDVs in here and Motostrelki is too much. You got too much of the same purpose tool, if you will. So what I'm instead going to do is have a look at which unit I can replace or possibly improve upon here. It depends a little on how you want to use this deck. I would always prefer to have 1 unit of flying infantry to make sure that I can do some early town grabs if I need to. but the transports that some of these infantry units are getting is very, very nice. Like the BMD-3, this is an exceptionally good vehicle. Great concourse on top of it, nice anti-tank gun, an autocannon on top of it. But the VDVs also perform quite nicely in the Mi-8TV, which gets some rocket pods, or the Mi-8T, which gets some different the same rocket pods, but less of them. And I like this because you get 13 of them, or 9, versus a 9 at Hardened or 7 at Veteran. What I would do here is take them in the Mi-8T to make sure that I still have a lot of airborne capability. So I'm going to delete one card of those and take 13 of them. I know that they're not the best that way, but if you're building a general purpose deck which can handle anything, this would be my ideal unit for it. Then he has 18 Motostrelki, which I think is still very, very high end, or very high amount. Let's see what other units could come in useful here. You got the Sapri, of course. I think that Spetsnaz are a mandatory unit. Let's scratch this VDV with their BMD-3, although it is a great vehicle. And we're going to transport them in the Mi-24A. The Mi-24A versus the D has the Phalange or the Fleita. They're not great weapon systems either way. The D is slightly better because it gets the Yak-B gun. So actually we're going to make the choice for these guys and get 7 Spetsnaz. Yeah, you get the same availability at the Mi-24A, so it doesn't really matter that much. These are going to be our kick-ass operators if we want to destroy enemy infantry in a town. And then the Motostrelki 90 I should say, because that does make a difference. The standard Motostrelki get the RPG-7. These guys get the RPG-7 VR, which has less range but a lot more AP power. You might not need very high AP power like this, because we already got the VDV to do that for us with their Vampires. We got the Concourse for long range destruction. So these guys could be well enough. They might just need to hold the line, and if that's all that they need to do, we don't need the 90s edition. The difference is that availability wise, no, you get the same units. It doesn't really matter that much. So what we could do here is pick a vehicle that is going to be the best suitable for the infantry. And that again depends on the type of unit that you like. There's pretty much no going wrong with these guys. The BMP-2s are nice units. You could take the BMP-3 if you want to, but you don't get that many of them. But with 13 VDV, some Spetsnaz, I don't think we need that many. So we're going to take the BMP-3, which has an Arcan, very, very high end, very fast ATGM. And especially the fast element I wanted to highlight, because with that they're going to arrive extremely quickly at your tank. Which means that the tank has almost no chance of getting into cover and will probably be destroyed by that missile. It also has a main gun with some HE power and a secondary gun which is an autocannon which has some AP power. So a great all-round vehicle and infantry killer. You don't get that many of them, unfortunately. And they're only available for Motostrelki 90 because these guys were developed in 1987 and Motostrelkis are 1975 units. So BMP-3 it is, and we're going to take 9. Support wise, he has the Nonas, medium range mortar carriers, he has the MSTAS, and this one apparently deserves a special shout out. I'm not entirely sure why. It is a solid artillery unit, but I don't really use it that much because I'm much more a fan of short-range artillery. With this, he decided not to bring a Smirch, which I think is a good idea because the Smirch, although it's a great anti-vehicle unit, is somewhat situational and requires a great deal of micromanagement. You gotta fire it, you gotta relocate it, rearm it, fire it again. I personally dislike MLRS because they're such inaccurate units, but some people really, really love them. I'm glad that he didn't take one, because that means that I don't have to change that. He has 4 Tunguska M's, which are the super high-end Tunguska, 100-point units. If you take care of these things well, they're going to take care of your AA very well. The difference between the 100-point and the 85-pointer is that the missile that they get is slightly worse. It's 2975 versus 3300, which is significant. The main gun is the same, it has the same radar spec, it has the same accuracy. The platform does have the same frontal armor. It's no more mobile, it doesn't have any greater air detection. So it's a great vehicle and I love using these things. The thing is that you just gotta keep an eye on their main guns. You want to keep that thing offline if a seaplane enters the area. Bucks, great anti-air units, long range capability. Some anti-helicopter capability, although I would not rely on these to take care of helicopters. And then he has the Tor. I like these as all-rounders because they can do both helicopter and anti-airplane. Last game I played with them they didn't perform that well, but that was mostly due to my poor micromanagement than to the weapon system itself. On the units that I've seen perform pretty well are the OSAs. The Tor has slightly more accuracy, but you get a lot less of those. So let's just take the OSA AKM for a spin. We're going to take 7 of those so that I can spread them out across my front line. Tank-wise, he has, of course, the pretty much mandatory T-72BU, extremely deadly vehicle, 23 AP power gun, 22 frontal armor, nothing going to change here. 3 T-64BVs, which are also very, very deadly tanks. They got a less amount of frontal armor, but 17 is still well enough, and their AP power is higher than their frontal armor, which means that they're excellent damage dealers. Rate of fire is 9, which is pretty good for a tank. They carry the Agona, which is a nice anti-tank weapon, so a solid all-round tank. Problem is, you don't get that many of them. T-64BMs is another tank that he went with. They got the Cobra anti-tank. And then he has the T-80Bs, which also carry the Cobra. Something that I don't really like about this setup is that everything comes packed with ATGMs, and those ATGMs are expensive. So that means that your logistics are going to be much more heavily taxed, and with that you're going to have to fly those supply choppers back and forth more often than you might like. So what I would like here is a T-80 version that does not carry an ATGM, and the T-80 base version, I suppose you could call it, does that. The difference is also in some armor, but the AP power is the same. It's just that the accuracy on this thing is a lot worse. It's 30% versus 50. So for 15 points, this T-80B is definitely worth it. Then you got the T-80A, which is the Reflex. The T-80U, of course, T-80UM. Let's see, some other unit that could replace this. Might be just the T-72B1. You don't get an anti-tank weapon. You get a little bit more armor, a higher AP power gun, and I think that that's a decent trade-off for scratching the T-80B. Let's go with 7 of those. The 64BM with its Cobra, great tank. But let's see what otherwise we could use. That's the problem. USSR has so many tanks that it's pretty much nice to get all of these in. Yeah, there's not really a lot we can use here. The 64 line is pretty much all packed with ATGMs except for the BVI and the 64A. T-72s, some of these guys even come with ATGMs like the T-72B. This BM, let's compare that to the B. That's the Sphere, which has higher AP power, higher accuracy. 1 point less frontal armor. Same gun pretty much, except that the 64BM has slightly better stabilization and accuracy. Mobility wise they're the same. You know what, I'm just gonna leave it as is. So we got a high point, high hitter tank. We got some BMs to back it up. Actually, I think we got too many of these now. I'm gonna need a little more low point vehicles. Just realized that. The 72A has a 45% accuracy and we get a higher number of those, so let's go use these as our medium tanks. So now we got a nice variance in points, if you will. 180, 130, 90, 55. I can tackle all threats with this. Reconnaissance, Spetsnaz VMF in a BTR-70, that's an interesting choice. I would always get these guys flying to make sure I can drop them off quickly. So we're going to scratch this and get them into a Ka-29TB. It also allows them to go to locations where you might not expect them and where a BTR-70 is not going to get to very quickly. Don't get me wrong, it's a very nice and fast vehicle, but it just does not have the mobility that the Ka-29 has. These Razvedkas are his passive spotters along with the Spetsnaz VMF, but again I would transport these guys in a helicopter. And we're going to go with the cheap helicopter, the Mi-8T, get 7 of those, and that gives me 11 infantry to spot. That should be enough. T-55s, nice reconnaissance tanks. Accuracy is pretty terrible, 20% and 5 on the move. But I do like using these things because they can take a hit or two. It depends of course what's firing at you, but this frontal armor is going to be capable of standing up to at least some impacts. And then the Ka-52 reconnaissance helicopter. Nice helicopter, this one. I prefer using it, although it is pretty expensive, but it has medium stealth, exceptional optics, high speed, anti-radar weaponry, and an IGLA, which means that it can take down helicopters as well. In the vehicles, he has pretty much all the vehicles that I love in here. The 62, the napalm tank, BMPT infantry killer, took 9 of those at trained, which is well enough for these guys. And then there's the Norov, which is a anti-tank gun, or a tank destroyer as they call it, but I don't think that it can really do that role very well. What I'm missing here is long-range anti-tank capability, which the, not the Jalo, I think that the Jalo might just be an overall better thing than the Norov anyway. Because it's a lot more mobile, or no, actually it's slightly more mobile than the Norov. My mistake there. What I would like to get is some more anti-tanks. The Sturm, maybe, with its very high range, 2800 meters, greater than pretty much anything that they otherwise have to offer with the 26-25 meter range. AP power isn't terrific with 20, but it should be well enough to do a lot of damage to most vehicles. Then it has 55% accuracy, which is good enough. I still got some activation points left, which might be because he went with the standard game instead of the beta, or at least that's my guess. So what I could do is keep the Norov in here, and then get the Sturms. Since it's a general deck, I'm going to take a higher number because I'm not sure what I'm going to be tackling. If it's a huge, large open front or just a small front. Helicopters, Mi-24 VP, Kokon M, 8 of those, great ATGM. Mi-24 V, the AA version of it with its 8 IGLAs, and then there's the Akula. There's always the difference between the Akula and the Mi-28. I keep comparing these things. I'm not going to do so now. I'm just going to stick to the Akula because it can do both ATGMs and AA. Whereas the Vickers, or sorry, the Mi-28 is more of an anti-ground helicopter all around. He does not have a lot of units in his air tab. 1 card of air superiority fighters, and very, very high end at that. MiG-25BM seaplane. Very, very good seaplane this. I suppose you could compare it to the Raven, based on both the range and the ECM. Turn radius could be better, but you don't want these things to be operating too far and too long anyway, because they're just going to be a main target. So we're not going to change anything here. And then there's the Su-24M, which is the carpet bomber. I'm going to delete this one, and I'm going to do that in favor of getting an anti-tank plane in. I think that is something that we could really, really use in this deck. Because if the enemy does some very high-end tank pushes, you're going to have something, or you're going to need something that can take care of that. MiG-27K comes to mind. The MiG-27M is also a possibility, although it has slightly lower AP values, 28 versus 30. These are semi-actives, so keep your eye on the target until it hits. These are not, they're fire and forgets. MiG-29Ms are cluster bombers. You got the Su-25T. This is not really what I would call a tank sniper. It's a combat air patroller, which means it's going to be circling over your units and engage anything it can see. Now, the most of the time I use these things in games versus the AI, just because I love using them. but in a 10v10 or a 1v1 they might not be that useful. And then there's the SU-27M, which also has a very high AP power weapon. Let's compare those quickly. They fire almost the same weapon system, except that the SU-27M has 4 of them. It has a higher range. Accuracy is the same, but the AP power is also the same. It does have higher ECM, and it carries some long-range Vimples. So this thing can do both, and that makes it a very expensive but useful multi-role. Just make sure that you don't use this thing as your main air superiority fighter, because you're going to regret that. So with that, one of those at veteran. It's not very much, but if you see something that you want dead, this thing is going to make sure that it does die. Naval section, Motostrelky 90 in the BMP-3. Then some Spetsnaz, some Storms. I would not take Urals, but I would take AA capability. So we're going to switch this to air defense gun and missile. The OSAs are amphibious. Strelas are amphibious as well. I'm not looking specifically for the amphibious tab, but it is nice because if you're landing forces, you have a medium to high chance that there's a river nearby. And you don't want to be bogged down by the river itself. That does make the BMP-3 viable. It makes the BTR-80A viable. Let's just go with the OSA here as well. And then we're going to need some reconnaissance. Without recon, these units are mostly useless. Spetsnaz GRUs. What I would really like here is a vehicle, because Spetsnaz, either the GRU or the VMF, and the Rozvedkas need to get out of their vehicle first. The BRDM-3 has an autocannon. You get a high number of them. They got good optics, good speed, and they're amphibious, so that makes the entire force here amphibious as well. So that's the USSR general deck. I'm not sure it's going to be capable of tackling any threat, but it is a nice go-to deck if you don't know what kind of game you're going to be encountering. If you're not sure if it's high end or low end, suppose you're the last one to enter a multiplayer match and you have about 5 seconds to pick a team, I suppose that this USSR general deck could serve you well. Whether I'm going to perform with it well remains to be seen. I'm going to record a video on that now, and I'll have it up as soon as possible. For now, thanks for watching. The link to sending me your deck is in the description below. I am running a little low on decks. I could use some more. I got a lot of gameplay videos standing by, but I need more decks to show off. If you guys want me to continue this series, if you will, of 2 videos, one outlining the deck and the other one playing with the same deck. So send me your deck, whatever kind of deck it is, I need them. The link to that is in the description below. If you liked watching this video, please hit like and consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. For now, I thank you for watching, and I'll see you next video.